If you're here for some NFL news, I've got you covered. With the latest NFL headlines, we'll start things off with Ndamukong Suh. And his free agency tour continues. And, you know, it's interesting. He will be visiting the Raiders today, according to reports out there. Recently visited the Rams, the Saints, and the Titans. You know, this is interesting because the Raiders have shown a tendency to be quite active so far in free agency. They already grabbed Jordy Nelson after he was cut by the Green Bay Packers. They cut Michael Crabtree. They bring in Doug Martin. So a lot of turnover going on in the Bay Area. Why not bring in Ndamukong Suh? Now, what I am hearing about Suh is this is going to be a long and drawn-out search. And honestly, why is there a rush to begin with? Why would there be a rush? Ndamukong Suh is easily the #1 guy among all the free agents out there. And he's going to take his time and weigh all of the options. So it seems to me that he's doing a little bit of a West Coast tour at this juncture. Already visited with the Rams, as we have some options for you guys with the reaction poll. Doing the Raiders today, I'm thinking the Seattle Seahawks are probably going to be next. But for the Raiders especially, defensive coordinator Paul Guenther, I think, would love to have Ndamukong Suh. I know they already have Justin Ellis, a fantastic one-technique nose guard. But imagine Ndamukong Suh in that front 7 too, with Khalil Mack as well, and you have Mario Edwards too. Rashaan Melvin in that secondary, they just got him. He's a fantastic corner, had a really good season in 2017. The Raiders' defense would be low-key pretty darn good in that division and the AFC in general. And from an attitude perspective, I think Ndamukong Suh would be a really good fit for Jon Gruden, for, you know, the entire franchise of the Raiders, that gritty, you know, play till the end of the whistle kind of mentality. So I think Ndamukong Suh would be a nice fit for the Oakland Raiders. But we'll see where he goes. He's going through all of his visits as we stand. So no indication if he's leaning in one team over the other, at least not from what I have been hearing. But we'll see. Ndamukong Suh leads the headlines here. He's visiting with the Raiders today. All right, Josh Rosen recently worked out for the Cleveland Browns and New York Giants. The Browns selecting #1 and #4 overall. The Giants at #2 overall. Could the Browns or the Giants spoil the party for the New York Jets? Because the logic out there is the Jets traded up shortly after the Rosen Pro Day with the intention of drafting Rosen at #3. And according to the Cleveland Plain Dealer, the Browns also had dinner with Sam Darnold on Tuesday night, last night, on the eve of his showcase, because, of course, his pro day is today. They also plan on doing the same with Josh Allen, talking about the Browns here. So they're going to be hosting some sort of workout, some sort of meeting with Allen as well. Allen's pro day is slated for this Friday. But back to Rosen. What team will draft him? I want you guys to open up your crystal ball a little bit here. Humor me in the comments section on Facebook Live as well as YouTube. Where will Josh Rosen go via the draft? Will the Browns get him at #1? Will the Giants get him at #2? They just worked out with him, right? The Browns and the Giants, but the Giants could go Saquon at #2. Will the Jets be able to grab him at #3? Does Rosen fall beyond that? I'd be shocked if he does. But that's the latest with Rosen and his workouts and the teams that he has been connected with. So Ryan Grant recently failed a physical with the Baltimore Ravens, and then he had no problem signing with the Colts. So something's fishy about that. 1 year, $5 million deal with Indianapolis. He had a career season. I'm doing an air quotes motion. You guys can't see me. 2017, 45 receptions, 573 yards, 4 touchdowns. So the Colts get a much-needed wide receiver here because Dante Moncrief moved on to the Jacksonville Jaguars. They had a big-time need because after T.Y. Hilton, it was Chester Rogers. So they need some depth there. Grant recently, speaking to reporters, listen to this, guys, quote, "If there was any issue with my ankle, then I wouldn't have passed the physical with the Colts and the Raiders." Somebody's going to have to check me on that. I wonder if the Baltimore Ravens actually play the Colts next season. Anybody watch the Cam Rogers Show, let me know if the Ravens play the Colts next year, because that would be an interesting storyline. Kind of a, grade C storyline, maybe D plus storyline, but something, interesting for Colts fans and Ravens fans respectively. Ryan Grant, now a member of the Indianapolis Colts. Mercedes Lewis is a free man. The Jaguars recently cut him, and Mercedes Lewis has been tied to Jacksonville for the last 12 years, guys. Unbelievable stuff. He will turn 34 in May. This was probably purely a financial decision. I'm sure the Jaguars would have loved to keep Mercedes Lewis. He's a great locker room guy, a great leader. But the reality of the Jaguars is they bring in Austin Seferian-Jenkins, and by the way, I don't have it there, but Niles Paul too. So a couple of quality tight ends, one more of a receiver, another more of a blocker. Why keep Mercedes Lewis, especially considering the Jaguars were kind of running up on the salary cap space? They recently cut Allen Hurns. I'll get to that in a matter of moments. Mercedes Lewis kind of part of that. So the release of Lewis saves $3.5 million on the salary cap. He actually saw a little bit of a resurgence last year in the receiving game, showed some quality receptions for the Jags a year ago. The move is certainly odd considering the Jaguars exercised Lewis's 2018 option, so I'm kind of putting up my thinking face about that one. But Lewis was kind of vocal, too, in saying that he didn't like how the move was handled. And I would agree with him. He has every right to be a little frustrated considering he has played the last 12 years with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Like, come on now, a little respect for one of the grizzled veterans out there. All right, sticking with the Jaguars here, Allen Hurns. He's a free agent. He will be visiting with the Dallas Cowboys today, according to reports. Allen Hurns, a 2014 undrafted free agent, recently cut by the Jags, which created $7 million in the salary cap with no dead money, which obviously is huge for a team. Some may argue the Jaguars are actually letting go of their weapons and kind of putting Blake Bortles in a tough position, but I would kind of argue against that. Like I said, Austin Seferian-Jenkins is coming on over, Niles Paul as well. I don't think they're in a really bad shape at all. Dante Moncrief there at wide receiver too. So I think Allen Hurns was a little expendable. So for the Cowboys, they get first dibs. You want to know why? Because Allen Hurns couldn't get a flight to New York to visit with the Jets. I believe it was a weather issue or something like that where Hurns could not travel and meet with New York. So instead, the Dallas Cowboys get first dibs, and that could mean the Cowboys don't let Hurns leave, and they sign him. And we could have some news today about that. So you guys probably recall Allen Hurns. He burst onto the scene in 2015, over 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns. So the guy has ability, kind of like with Allen Robinson a couple of years ago when he had that big-time campaign, right? So why not? Visiting with the Dallas Cowboys here today. We'll see what happens, and we'll see what comes out of that. All right, let's get to the next news here. Jonathan Martin, former NFL player, pleads not guilty to 4 counts of making criminal threats and 1 count of possessing a loaded firearm in public. So not a good look for this guy. You guys probably recall the whole Richie Incognito thing. A preliminary hearing is scheduled for April 25th. If convicted, Martin faces up to 6 years in jail. And this is all stemming from the February 22nd Instagram post that showed a shotgun with ammo and the message that said, when you're a bully, victim, and a coward, your options are suicide or revenge. And then he tagged the Dolphins, Mike Pouncey, and Richie Incognito. So obviously a very serious situation. But Jonathan Martin apparently thinks he is innocent. So that's the latest with him. How about the NFL and the rule change around the catch and what is a catch and what isn't a catch? So Troy Vincent, Executive Vice President of Football Operations, recently talked to the Washington Post and indicated that changes are coming to the catch rule. So Vincent told the Washington Post they're working towards reversing that slight ball movement rule, also going to the ground rule, i.e. Dez Bryant. So some changes are coming with that. The competition committee reportedly finalized its proposal yesterday. So they plan on presenting it at next week's league meetings in Orlando. Only indisputable video evidence, by the way, will change the call on the field rather than the previous, quote, clear and obvious requirement. I didn't even know that was a thing. I thought it was always indisputable video evidence. Really not sure what the change is there. But did Dez catch it? Yes, no? Hit me up in the reaction poll. Give me a heart for yes, a like for no, and throw them in the comments section on YouTube as well. But we are headed for changes with the catch rule across the National Football League. So stay tuned for that as we head towards the meetings next week in Orlando. All right, so Eric Ebron, he has been searching for a destination. He has found one. He is now a member of the Indianapolis Colts. It's a 2-year, up to $15 million deal. The Colts now have a really good 1-2 tight end punch all of a sudden. So you got Jack Doyle and Eric Ebron, and we know how Andrew Luck obviously loves his tight ends dating back to his Stanford days. Ebron's best year came back in 2016 when he caught 61 passes, 771 yards. You know, it doesn't scream 10th overall kind of numbers, but perhaps he could find a new life here with the Indianapolis Colts. He did rank 19th in value per play among all tight ends last season. So it is safe to say Ebron hasn't lived up to those expectations of being drafted 10th overall back in 2014, but you've got a new system in Indianapolis, a new head coach in Frank Reich. You got a new offensive coordinator in Nick Sirianni. Who knows what can happen? Meanwhile, for Lions fans, by the way, just kind of a fun nugget here, they can drown in their sorrows knowing that the Lions passed on Odell Beckham Jr., Taylor Lewan, and Aaron Donald to get Eric Ebron. So, yeah, hindsight, 2020, gotta love it. All right, Eric Decker, what's the latest with him? He visited the Oakland Raiders yesterday, and he's continuing his tour here. It was reported that he was going to go visit the New Orleans Saints, but Sean Payton said, nope, that is not true at all. Actually replied on Twitter to the person that put that out there, a reporter for the Denver Post, I believe. Decker, not the greatest season a year ago. Pro Football Focus graded him as the league's 60th ranked wideout. He is still a solid red zone target in my eyes, recorded at least 80 receptions for 1,000 yards and 11 scores in 3 of 4 seasons from 2012 through 2015 with the Jets and the Denver Broncos. Now, he's been on a bit of a bad spell here of late. Not awful numbers, 54 receptions, 563 yards. Obviously, the touchdowns leave a lot to be desired back in 2017. But I think he will find a good spot, and as long as an offense knows how to utilize him correctly, he should be fine. And I think he would be an interesting addition to the Oakland Raiders because you have Amari Cooper you got to worry about on the outside. It'll be interesting to see if Jordy Nelson plays the slot position now because he's not getting any younger, and he really struggled to create separation on the outside last year. We'll see what the Raiders do about Jordy, but bringing in Eric Decker I think will really change the game even further inside those 20s, in that red zone, or the green zone as offenses like to put it. So Eric Decker recently visited the Raiders. Obviously did not come out with a signing, but that does not mean at all that he's not going to sign with them. Maybe just taking his time, kind of like Ndamukong Suh. All right, this broke yesterday from one wide receiver to another. Zay Jones of the Buffalo Bills recently arrested, according to TMZ Sports. There is a video out there of Zay Jones apparently getting in a scuffle with brother Caleb, who is a member of the Minnesota Vikings. And Zay Jones is seen nude in the video and trying to jump out of his LA apartment complex off the 30th floor, left a bloody trail in the complex. He's currently being held in LA County Jail's medical ward, but not a good look for Zay Jones as we stand. Yeah, I mean, a guy who really didn't make a lot of noise last season in his rookie year. He's going to have to take a big-time step in the right direction, legally speaking, mentally speaking, and then, of course, on the football field here the rest of the way. But obviously, Zay Jones in some major trouble. We'll see what comes out of that. Some good news for New England Patriots fans. Matthew Slater is coming back. So for all those Pats fans who were worried about Slater visiting with the Steelers over the weekend, maybe he was going to go to a rival in Pittsburgh, that did not end up being the case. Belichick now has the services of Slater and Cordero Patterson as special teamers. So I'm thinking special teams will be pretty darn good for the New England Patriots next season. Now, Slater is officially a wide receiver. So if you look at the wide receiver core, it's kind of overcrowded. You've got Julian Edelman, Brandon Cooks, Chris Hogan, Malcolm Mitchell, Kenny Britt, Philip Dorsett, and then Matthew Slater, all in theory vying for snaps in 2018. Obviously, Slater won't get cut, but maybe one of those wide receivers that I just talked about will. So it could be quite a battle, quite a storyline to watch out for if you're a Patriots fan as we go throughout the off season. All right, Richard Sherman has spoken about what went down with him and the Seattle Seahawks. So we all know that he signed a 3-year, $39 million deal with very little guaranteed money, and Sherman got some criticism for it. But in a very interesting Players Tribune article, Sherman documents how he and the Seahawks didn't even negotiate prior to his release. It was almost like Seattle leadership just had it all planned out. So Sherman didn't even talk about, his value and whether or not he wants to stay with the Seattle Seahawks, and the willingness to take a pay cut or whatever. Apparently Seattle said, we're going to release you. We're not going to tell you, or we don't know when we're going to do it, but we're going to do it. And Sherman's just like, okay. And then eventually his phone starts blowing up, getting the news that he got released by the Seahawks. And then guess who comes calling? Kyle Shanahan, immediately after wanting to have dinner with the guy. And the rest is history, of course. Sherman now a cornerback for the San Francisco 49ers, opposite of Ahkello Witherspoon in that secondary, which was a big-time need for San Francisco. And they've made a good amount of moves so far this offseason. Let me know if you think the 49ers will make the playoffs in 2018. Hit me in the comments section. So for Sherman's deal, it includes a $5 million signing bonus, $2 million base salary with $1 million incentives based on playing time, $3 million bonus if he makes the Pro Bowl in 2018. That's kind of the breakdown for next season. Sherman also made note that playing the Seahawks twice a year was a, quote, perk in signing with the San Francisco 49ers. So we have two fun matchups next year already. Seattle and San Francisco, guaranteed, because Richard Sherman is going to be playing for the 49ers. By the way, I will say it's really pleasant to hear, and almost refreshing to hear Richard Sherman actually kind of be logical about all this. You don't really hear that from star players, because Sherman's out here saying, look, I'm coming off an Achilles injury. Why would I get a bunch of guaranteed money? It seemed like kind of Richard Sherman understood that, and he's a smart guy. So it was kind of cool to see that, because you could have the player of Richard Sherman's caliber coming off an Achilles injury and still demanding a lot of guaranteed money. But you got to understand it from the front office perspective. Why roll the dice? So I think that's kind of what Richard Sherman was talking about there. And then finally, John Fox is now a broadcaster. ESPN has hired him to become a studio analyst. This according to The Athletic. An interesting move considering, well, John Fox never really has been a friendly, happy media guy, even back in his coaching days and his interviews and all that. I don't remember too many funny sound bites from him. It's kind of not like Rex Ryan. Rex Ryan, we saw that coming. Of course he was going to be a broadcaster. John Fox, I did not see that coming. It'll be interesting to see how he does with ESPN, with, of course, Herm Edwards heading on to Arizona State to become the head coach for the football program out there. There was a little bit of a void there as a studio analyst for ESPN. So in comes John Fox.